Good evening. It is Tuesday, the 18th of July, 2023. You're back for another episode of the Tiger Town podcast with your hosts, Zac and Toby. New studio, new mechanics, new machinery. We're up and running. Hopefully, production quality through the roof, my friend. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, I'm good. You can't complain, really. Oh, I can, and I think I've said this time and time again. No one will listen, but um, look, apart from everything that's happening out in Tiger World, I'm good. What about yourself?
Not much, just getting used to the fact that we're going to be on screen for the entire pod. So making sure that,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
scratch myself
can't.
at appropriate times.
Yeah, it's going to be
There's no hiding
it's
on
going to
this
be
one.
pay attention for an hour and not zone in and out sometimes.
Hey, mate, I reckon we'll manage. Uh, West Tigers, they haven't been in the news much lately.
No, not at all. No, it's been
No.
it's been really refreshing to not have to see multiple reports about you know fractions within the club and all that stuff. It's been great. It's been great.
Yeah, we've got a little bit to unpack. I mean, a wee little bit to unpack, but I'm sure we'll get to little bit of the rumbling stuff a little bit later in the show, mate. Last Friday, 14th of July, Knights 34, West Tigers 18. What'd you make of the game?
It's very frustrating to watch. Very frustrating. Um, our edges were shocking, both sides. Um, I think that it was probably one of the worst games this year that Toll has had for us. Um, and he's been sort of going a little bit downhill in terms of. See, he was playing extremely well. It's probably one of our best for a lot of the season. Um, and then, yeah, it just hasn't been replicating that week in, week out. And then, yeah, it sort of culminated against the Knights. Wasn't a fan of his game. But then, it was very frustrating to watch Kapoa. It's not really Kapoa's fault. He's been thrown around to every position known to man. But he also looked just completely disinterested. Like, I was watching time and time again, he'd miss a tackle and then he'd stop. Like, he didn't try to rectify his mistake, didn't try to back himself up, he just stopped. And that's not good enough. It's not good enough at all. And it's really, really frustrating.
Yeah, so frustrating, basically, to sum it up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
just,
I don't think you're alone there. Look, it's no secret that 15-minute period off the back of the Jareen Buller incorrect no try was
oh
where
my
the game was won and lost.
Oh my god. I just, yeah. I was watching that and I'm like, I cannot fathom, like, how Jared Sutton gets away with it all the time against the Tigers. Like, he is blatantly biased against us. Blatantly. Like, there was so many calls in that game. Like, when Greg Marju was held up, he looked at that angle, I reckon, for about 3 or 4 minutes, trying to find a way that went over. He looked at the angle, and yet everyone will say, oh, he was looking at it prior to it while we were setting up for the kick. But we set up for the kick for 60 seconds. And he took one look at that and went, yeah, it's knock on. When it was very clearly a knockback.
Not only that, but the on-field call was a try as well.
Yeah. And how can you overturn
And
it? There was
you can't.
literally no way there was 100%. Sorry. There was 100% of evidence to suggest that went backwards. None. Oh, that went forward, sorry. None.
Mm.
And like, don't get me wrong.
He tried really hard to take one of our other tries off us as well, if you
Yeah,
recall.
when apparently it was either Wakeham or Smith might have grabbed a jersey.
Hmm.
For
He
literally,
tried really
yeah,
hard.
he
Yeah,
really did. And
yeah,
that's like,
yeah.
I don't understand why more of this isn't being talked about. Like, apparently we're supposed to protect the refs. Yeah, whatever. Like, protect the refs all you want. But when stuff like that happens all the time from very select referee, how is this not looked at more? I don't understand. And it's
I don't know. I can't think of a time, and it's probably correlated with the fact that we're perennially at the bottom of the ladder at the moment and very success starved, to put it mildly. I can't remember a time where the refs are, how do I say, the refs squad is so full of referees that are disliked across the game, much less in Tigerland. We're not the only team that seems to get stiff from certain names, certain officials. I struggle to think of an official I'm happy to see on the team sheet when I see it rolled out every single week. Almost all of them. If they
mm,
don't, we've spoken about unconscious bias ad nauseum. We're not going to make this about the referees, but um, if they aren't showing elements of what we believe that to be, and that's our very, let's be honest, biased um, loser mentality in some ways, then at the very least they're just getting calls blatantly wrong out of the blue. There was the example with Casey Badger a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember specifically which
oh,
one it was,
sure.
but there was a shocker around that one too. And yeah,
I think that was the Joffa put down against the Cowboys.
that might be it. Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, but yeah, it's you used to be able to have a look at a ref and you'd see two or three names in their pool of referees and go, I'm happy to see him. I'm happy to see Matt Checken. Um,
Happy to see
you know,
Amanda.
you can even go back to people like Tim Mander and people like that. So yeah, anyway, outside of the referees, obviously that was a pretty critical call because they then went and scored four tries in the next 15 minutes or so off the back of
Yeah.
that and absolutely tore our right edge to shreds. We've spoken about it a tremendous amount of time before that no try then becomes a momentum shifter. It's an
Yeah.
external momentum shifter. It's not the two teams jostling for momentum and seeing who comes out on top. It's
No.
an official decision. It's a referee's decision that then by default gives the other team momentum, or at the very least halts the momentum of another team. And then they were good enough to capitalise, and they just tore us apart, sorry, in an area of weakness, and we were awful. That's not an excuse. We went to water, and that's has not been the nature of this team this year. It genuinely hasn't. Before the Cowboys loss, I spoke about the fact that we'd only um, conceded in all the losses we've had this year. We'd only conceded over 28 once, which was against the Broncos prior to that Cowboys loss. So it's not. We haven't been a team necessarily that has just thrown in the towel this year. But there was moments in that game where that's exactly what it looked like. And I don't believe it was Toa at all. I think Toa was just trying a bit hard. I actually did. I thought in the back line, at least in that right edge, he was the least of my concerns. My major
Oh yeah.
concerns were Wakeham and Papali'i, and then and to a lesser extent Kapoa. But to your point too, it's very easy to hang your winger out to dry. A winger's got to make a pretty tremendously bad mistake to be the cause of a backline shift that leads to points. And the only mistake you can generally see that happening is if they hang way back in anticipation for a kick, which creates an overlap by default, or they jam in and make a meal of it and don't even get a hand on the player, which it doesn't allow your defenders enough time to sweep up and clean up behind the backside, because that's what can happen. If a centre or a winger can jam in, your 5'8" and second rower generally will sweep back behind and cover in case there is a miss. But in order for them to be able to cover effectively, that winger needs to make contact. I didn't see Kapoa particularly doing that, so I think he was hung out to dry in that regard. What I did see is the lack of cohesion between he and Toa. But again, I think it was made upon decisions of Papali'i and Wakeham. And I want to actually put the blowtorch on Papali'i a little bit here. Way too many times this year, he has overcommitted to help his half. It was Brooks for a while when he was defending on Brooks's side. You watch how much he turns in, and he's pretty ploddy off the mark, Papali'i. He makes every effort, but he always looks like he's chasing his tail, trying to get to that sweep man, which always makes his centre second guess. And so if he doesn't have faith in Wakeham or Brooks earlier in the year, then that's always going to make the job hard for the centre, and the centre has to toss a coin. And on the weekend, Stafford Toa tossed a coin 4 times, and he lost all four because Papali'i turns that shoulder in, turns, and then has to go again, and he doesn't have the ability to move off. I noticed it at Parramatta at the back end of last year, and I'd hoped that it wasn't something that carried over. Papali'i's really got to stop turning that shoulder in, and he's got to trust his half a little bit more. Um, it's not like we have a Sam Walker or someone like that at the moment. Wakeham can defend, and you need to be able to trust your half in order to do that job. If you're not going to trust your half, then your half, your centre, and your winger, sorry, need to be tight and up. If you're not doing that, then like I said, it's a toss of a coin.
No, exactly. And like I said, I wasn't exactly blaming Capola for all that stuff. The thing that just annoyed me about Capola was the lack of follow through. Yes, okay, it's not exactly your mistake to, jam in but miss it. But instead of sitting there and stopping dead in your tracks and going, oh, like that, you turn around and you chase. Now, Talau made a couple of, again, poor decisions in defence. But to his credit, he turned and he tried to rectify that. Mistakes are going to happen, where, Noffa's been a punching bag for these sort of defensive mistakes forever, for as long as he's played for the Tigers, which is his whole career. But you'll always see Noffa try to rectify that mistake. It used to just become frustrating because you knew that he would always jam in and teams found it very easy to read. That's going to happen, and it's going to happen with, you think about the age of our backline. I think the average age was 22. So that's a young backline.
23,
Very
yeah.
young. And
Yep.
yeah, it's just like, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But try to rectify it. Try to do something to turn the point. Like, you look at the times when Bull has made potentially, like, he positions himself very, very, very well. Don't get me wrong. Positions himself very well. But if he hasn't positioned himself well and they make a break, he will fight tooth and nail to try to rectify that mistake. And he's 10 games in. Capola's been around for a little bit now. He's not a seasoned veteran, but he's probably reaching close to 50 games. You have to have that competitive nature. But again, probably a bit more to your point before about, the momentum shift and stuff like that. You have to think about the players as well. And this was something I was thinking about after the game. When it is very clear, when you look at that screen, and it is very clear when you're watching the replay that it's not a knock-on, but they still give it a no try, they've got to put their hands up and just say, what more can we do? Like, you're literally sitting there and you're taking sure things away from us. You'd have to sit there and go, I can't fathom what more we can do. And so sometimes you have to forgive them for giving up, because when the cards are stacked against you, and it's not luck going against you, it is direct calls going against you. Like, you think about
Are you back on the
the game.
referees again, bro?
Yeah, but I'm just sort of, hey, we've
Yeah, I
talked about this before. This pod is about catharsis. It's about really releasing a lot of this shit. It's my therapy. It's fun. But yeah, like, you think about to that Roosters game last year when Tarmow just lost it at the ref. That was a long time coming. That was, you think about how many people have come to this club and realised that you don't always get the rob of the green with this club. And then they're like, well, this is frustrating. You could see Appy after the game. He was so dejected. Like, he didn't even show up for the press conference, which I found very interesting. No, the captain didn't show up. It was just Tim Sheen.
No, that's they're not. That's because they're not at the moment. Remember that the RLPA have got them not doing media commitments.
Media thing. Yeah. No. Okay. Well, I'll scrap that then.
Yeah,
but
I'll tell you what, that footage of him talking to Clemmer, to be a fly on the wall in that, I just would love to know what's being said. Just to segue into that, and I know that you probably had another point to make, but just quickly, is I really liked seeing that from him because it shows that he gives a shit.
Yeah.
And that there's frustration and he's looking for answers and he's trying to find a solution and that he's getting annoyed. And when good players, class players, quality players, experienced premiership winning players are showing that level of frustration, it shows that they care, and it shows he's not going to continue putting up with poor performances or people letting his side, he's the captain, letting them down. And so he's going to start take into account. You're gonna know, I think, that he's going to put systems in place for the next 2 years minimum, however long he's here, to make sure that this stuff doesn't continue. Because he's not the type, I think, particularly he's talking to Clem, who's just going to keep putting up with it. I like seeing it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that too. I think he only signed a 2-year deal with us. I'd chuck an extra year, maybe two on it now, and
Two
purely
year,
for
two 2 year mutual, so mutual
2 year.
third,
Okay.
which I misunderstood. Apparently, was I thought that both parties had to agree, but it's either party, so either party can trigger it
Okay. Well, fuck,
essentially.
trigger it now. I
I actually
I've
don't.
heard.
I actually, provided that he's happy and provided that everything's going okay, and hopefully, once we get rid of a few of these things and we actually set sail and we can build some consistency, I've got every faith in that. But I could see him playing for another 2 years after that third year. He's
Oh,
only, what is he now? 30, 31 this year?
yeah. Cameron Smith played to
He's a proper,
37.
yeah, he could play to 34, 35, no dramas. So I'm not overly
100%.
concerned about Appy's longevity for another 3 or 4 years. And you were going to say reasons why you'd have him. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, aren't they?
I think, yeah, well, we know what a key player is. We know that. But that's not the reason I'd re-sign him. I'd re-sign him because for the exact reason that you said, like you liked seeing, like you appreciated seeing him so dejected because you knew he cared. Like he comes from such a successful clubs, Rabbitohs, Manly when he was there, very successful as well, and then Panthers. He knows what success looks like, and he's competitive as like anything. Like you see that with his line speed. You see that with that try he scored. Like that was just pure determination. You see that time and time again. And you know that the young guys coming through will look at him and say, that is how you're supposed to perform. That is how you're supposed to give a shit. And keep him around just for that. Even if he,
He's an example setter. Culture. You
yeah,
talk culture.
exactly.
They love talking culture. Yeah, that's exactly what it
Yeah.
is. Most definitely. And you hear this week as well the talks of Johnny Bateman. Blore mentioned it in an interview that he got everyone in, or didn't got everybody in, but there was a point at training this week where he basically, in the huddle, said, "I didn't come here to lose. I said I came here to win. I said this week is massive for us," and got the boys together and said we need to start putting in. And I'm not going to paraphrase, but there's plenty of links to it, and he had a chat with the media as well a little bit later. So I'm
No.
wondering then if the strike may be over, but it sounds as though these senior players have just had enough, and they're finally grabbing a few blokes by the scruff and saying, we need to turn this around, and it starts now. And I hope that's the case because it's not like it is simply execution now. We've got excuses. We've got calls go against us. We've got bounce of the ball. We've got injuries to key players. We've got excuses, right? But um, and excuses lead to, or those types of excuses, key injuries can lead to legitimate reasons that might affect something like completion rates or uh, being able to execute, sorry. So executing plays at speed, that sort of stuff. Executing game plans. If you've got two reserve graders standing in as your halves and your different centre wing combination the last 6 weeks, of course you're not going to be perfectly aligned with one another as you would be. But if at the very least these blokes are now drawing a line in the sand, these senior guys, and going, you know what, this squad, we've fallen into a hole, and the 1%ers is what we need out of every single damn one of you this week. Everybody chases from marker. Everybody dives on the loose ball. Everybody rushes up in defence for the whole 80 minutes. Everybody blitzes on the kick chase. You fight for everything this week, and then see
Yeah.
where that takes you from there. And you start from somewhere, because you might still drop balls, you might still give away penalties, you might still blow a try scoring opportunity, but at the very least, to your point, talking about Kapoa, you won't watch a football team. I'm hoping this is what they're trying to instill in them. You won't watch a football team moving forward that isn't doing those effort plays.
They won't die wondering. And that's the thing.
Yeah,
Like, there's nothing more frustrating than replaying. Like, we both, like, we've mentioned this time and time again. We just like to plug it as well. We both have played football in the past. We both, had a bit of a crack at that. And for me, playing football, there was nothing worse than replaying an opportunity missed in my head over and over again. It annoyed me. It frustrated me. It was like, you make a break down the side, someone passes it to you, and you look at the try line before you catch the ball, and you drop it clean cold. Nothing more frustrating than an opportunity missed. And so having that mindset of not dying wondering is just something, we talk about effort, we talk about improving in that retrospect. And, we were for a little bit, but then, something morale's dropped or something like that. And the effort isn't there like it used to be. Well, it hasn't been there for probably a month. Um, you know, it kind of started going a little bit sideways after Appy got injured. Um, but it's, like you've got the likes of Bateman who I don't want him to ever leave. I love the fact he gets in there and he gets, that sort of push and shove that he had with was it Hetherington? No, Hetherington
Yeah.
hit Smith, slapped Smith. No, he had a push and shove with
Mm,
someone and just told him to get
mm,
up. Just get up and play the ball. And I
mm.
don't know, a little bit of a actually massive segue in that game. Did you see the running battle between him and Hastings?
Yeah, I did actually. Hastings
Did
had
you
it
see the swinging arm?
towards the end of that game. Yeah, towards the end of that game,
Yeah.
Hastings was throwing a few dog shots, and I thought the cameras have finally got you, mate.
Yeah, this is who you are.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So,
That's the first
um,
time I've seen on camera Hastings do some dodgy shit. And I was like, wow, I wonder if that's just the one-on-one with Bateman stuff, or I wonder if this is the player that everyone has always described behind the scenes.
yeah. But yeah, that was pretty funny to watch.
Tell you
But
what, if I
yeah,
was
it's
Jackson Hastings, I would not be stirring up Johnny.
oh god, no. No. If I was any player,
Goodness,
I wouldn't be staring up Hastings. I mean, it wouldn't be staring up
even
Bateman.
even the commentators when Tino and him were going toe to toe about a month ago were going, Tino, you don't want that.
Yeah, I love the
He's a
mongrel. I
he's a
love it.
pikey, mate. Like
Yeah,
he'll bite your ear off.
yeah. And like that competitiveness, we've missed that for so long. Like, you know,
Mm,
we thought Clem has done a very, very good job since coming here. Don't get me wrong. He's definitely
love
pushed
Clem.
him, but he's not that mongrel that he used to be when he was at the Dogs. He's not, getting in there, getting hard. He'll always protect his teammate no
Which
matter what.
which I know you're making a point about that specifically, but which, to be fair, has actually been good because
Oh
he's
yeah,
not giving away silly penalties. His uh, tackle percentages through the roof. His meterage is through the roof. He's being that genuine leader that we want. So I know you're making a point about how that aggressive competitive edge
I love
is
that mongrel,
beneficial,
but
but but in Clemmer's circumstance, we've got
aggression.
the best version of him, I think. Yeah, but we
Oh,
definitely
100%.
need it, and Johnny's got it.
Oh, I tell you who'd be. Oh god, Knights would be kicking themselves about signing Jack Hetherington. Bloke's a nutcase.
Yeah, not in a good way either. Just loose
Nah,
cannon.
loose cannon doesn't really care what he does. Yeah. Um.
He gives away as many penalties and errors as what Seafarth used to, except doesn't do the 1%. He doesn't try hard.
No, but he gives away those stupid penalties based off his aggression, whereas bloody Seyfarth was just like an like just up until recently was basically an
It's like a
overexcited Labrador.
Labrador on crack. A Labrador on crack.
Wow,
Yeah,
we
just
literally just went the
gets
exact same analogy, pretty much.
gets too
That's
excited.
hilarious.
I think we've said that. I think it's because we've said it so many times in the
Oh,
past.
have we? Okay,
Anyway,
there you go.
yeah. Anyway, mate, I digress. Should we have a bit of a chat about the goings on? Been hard to miss. What do you think?
Before that, was there anything from the Knights game that you liked?
Yeah, there were several things. I mean, it was another instance where we've got behind on the scoreboard, come back into the game, and showed a little bit of resilience in that regard. We got it back within a try. Now, as much as they missed a few kicks at goal, it was 18-12 there at one point. We were right back in that game.
Yeah.
And if you'll recall, I did say that the Knights would jump out to an early lead and we would claw
Mm.
it back, and then they would kick away at the end. Um, yeah, that was good. it was hard to look past that defensive effort in the first half, to be honest. And the other side of the coin was, I mean, Buller's the obvious one, was the fact that with Appy back, it's not like he came back in and was the difference maker, which
No,
in a way pleased me because it showed that others were doing it, and it was primarily during Buller. But the forwards continued to do what they needed to do. It was just those edges that just lost us that game, and that is just where we're at. We don't have a centre pairing that was settled on. We know where we sit with the halves, which affects the connection and the link with the second rower, which affects the edge. And Newcastle were just good enough to be able to exploit it with the likes of Ponga hanging out the back. I mean, he and Walsh are top tier these days. There's seldom anybody better in terms of their ability to get on that outside based upon their speed. That's all that it is. So credit to them for nailing it. I yeah I guess like I said, it's a cliche, but we are where we are. You know, we still don't have the halves are still a mess. And I don't know what there was to expect anything more. If Ponga was on song, we were always up against it. I don't think
yeah,
that Newcastle side had us beat in any other regard, to be perfectly honest. We held them in the middle. It was just Ponga and those edge plays were the difference. That's the bottom line. Considering
fair.
half our side is a reserve grade side, and the boys are doing it tough, I guess that's a positive takeaway. And then obviously, as I mentioned, Buller just strength to strength.
Yeah, like if I know we just recently signed him until the end of 2025 or 2026.
2026 we extended him to, as far as I'm concerned.
Let's chuck another 2 years on that. Just do it. Just cause.
Yeah, I'll just double check that, but we did extend him prior. I think pretty sure he was signed this year and next, and we did another 2 years on top of it, which would be the end of 2026. But we did that the day before he debuted, I think,
Yeah. Yep.
or
Might have been the
something
week.
close to
Actually, might
that.
have been the week after
Uh,
he debuted.
Sorry, it is the end of 2025.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Res-
he'll be off contract
Respected.
at
You know,
November next year, but you would dare say that that would be priority number one.
because you know who's going to come knocking, and it's going to be the
Roosters.
Roosters.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, we can talk about now. I just trying to hold off all the uh, all the discussions
Prolonging the
about
inevitable.
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
if you've been living under Uluru, you'd know that you wouldn't know, I should say, that over the last week or so, there's uh, been rumblings, let's say, where essentially the whole bring Fulton in to be the top 30 recruitment guy at West Tigers, which was done with board approval, but without consultation with Benji and Sheens. That happened about 3 or so months back. That all happened. And there was a few concerns at the time that you probably want to consult the coaching staff. Eventually, it's been bubbling away. Eventually, it's come to a bit of a head where the two were barely on speaking terms, and I think it culminated. It's a bit complicated, but I think it culminated essentially. The flashpoint was around the halfback. That's how the story broke originally, where Benji wanted to go for Caesar, whereas Fulton was leaning more towards Jack Cogger, the backup from Penrith. And then linked to that story was the fact that a couple of big player managers of some of our bigger players, so Daniel O'Loughlin and Mario Tartak, had met with Pascoe and basically spoken to him about their concern about the development of the club moving forward and their juniors. Essentially, these are Fulton men. So Tartak is in Fulton's pocket, and part of the big allure of bringing Fulton over originally was that he has such a good foothold in Western Sydney, had brought a lot of players over to Manly as a result of that, the likes of the Fainus, Olokawatu, Talatau Kula, these types of players, gun players. Many of them are Tartaks, and him coming to the Tigers thought that he would bring his brood with him. Now, uh, multiple sources, and it's hard to talk about scuttlebutt. I mean, obviously, only those in the know really genuinely know. But the talk that I have heard is basically that Schuster and the Fayunus were signed, sealed, and delivered to the Tigers the moment that Fulton signed on, provided that everybody was happy. I think originally Benji was happy with Schuster, but then there was talk that 1.2 was the value that they that Tartak had put on him. And from what I had heard, um, essentially Scott Fulton had almost insured or assured Tartak that he would get Schuster a bumper deal at the Tigers. So essentially, at the expense of the Tigers, Tartak and Schuster would be getting a big payday. Schuster, good player, a lot of improvement in
Not
him.
worth, not worth what was it, 900 to a million?
1.2 is what some
1.2.
of
There you
the
go.
numbers floated around were. So essentially, Tartak was happy because he thought that Schuster was going to get plonked out at the Tigers on a big money deal, which means he gets a big fat commission. Happy days, and he'll bring the Fayunus along, etc. Obviously, at the expense of the Tigers' cap, which is a major concern considering Fulton is now an employee of the Tigers and should be looking out for the Tigers, not looking out for his player manager mates. Obviously, as a recruitment guy, your key stakeholders are going to be the people you work closely with. So those connections are everything. You can't afford to get them offside. Evidently, off the back of that, it seems as though Tartak has got his nose out of joint. And that's why the Fayunus were then put in the shop window a little bit to the likes of the Dolphins, and the Bulldogs have had to sniff that sort of stuff as well. There's still been no decision made. But I think from the issues between Fulton and Benji, Tartak, and by extension, who's probably been talking to this other player manager, O'Loughlin, who happens to manage Papali'i and Utoi Kamanu, they basically then have met with Pasco to say, look, we want to know for sure that Fulton's going to be here for the long haul. We know it hasn't got off to the best start. We trust him to rebuild the club, and we like the vision that it's going to go as long as he's around. We need to know that Fulton's sticking around. And so I think that's what the hold up is in a lot of ways. I, I've also heard that softly the Dolphins have been told no. The Bulldogs might still be in with a hunt for the Fayunus, but essentially, I think in many ways we're still preference number one. But this whole beef between Benji and Fulton about who's making decisions and the directions they want to go with the players they sign, it essentially blew up, and we all heard about the meeting they were going to get together and thrash out the differences. They ended up having separate meetings, and evidently they've both agreed now that they'll shake hands, move on, and work professionally off and into the future. So that's where it's at. Lee Hadjipantelis went on 360 last night. And I'll be perfectly honest, I think he gave a brilliant account of himself. I'll be the
100%.
first to admit that Lee doesn't mind getting his voice on air, and I think he speaks relatively well. I actually like Lee. I don't always agree with everything he says, and I don't think he's a PR expert. I don't think he knows, but he's doing more damage to his and the club's reputation. But that bloke has poured millions of dollars into our club. He's the chair of the board. He's a genuine fan. I find it hard to believe that he's deliberately sabotaging anything, but I digress. And essentially, he just went on and he cleared up a few bits and pieces. Um, One of the things that he did mention, I will say, is that the Brooks contract situation, but it was floated on 360 as that we let Brooks go. He said that's not correct. He said Brooks's management, they've been negotiating for a while, and this is basically the long and short of it. It's not verbatim, but I'll paraphrase. Brooks' management had been on and off unofficially negotiating with the Tigers for a while, several months. They then said to the Tigers, we haven't received an offer, we would like an offer in 24 hours. So the Tigers presented them with an offer. They rejected it, and they came back and they said, this is more what we're looking at. So the Tigers revised it, and they resent a fresh offer, which was exactly what they had requested, or close to what they had requested in the same ballpark. And to Lee's point, he said we would assume that would have been received favourably, are the words he used, indicating that the revised offer that the Tigers did was on the advice of Brooks's very manager, Isaac Moses. That sat with the Brooks camp for several weeks without a response. In the meantime, he's probably working with Manly to try to see what deal he can get going. Then the board basically said, this has sat for too long. On the Thursday, they said, we need a decision by Sunday, which was a 3-day thing. All the media blew up at the time because they said they gave him 3 days to make a decision. This local junior, he's been loyal to the club. You only gave him 3 days. Lee said, that's not correct. He said his team had this offer for several weeks on the Thursday, we notify them to say we need the decision by Sunday. So they'd had the offer on their table for close to a month by the time the deadline actually came. It's just that they actually did put a deadline on and said that we need to make a decision because, as you do, you got to move forward. It was at that point they rejected the offer, which was the offer that they had requested or near enough to it, and ended up signing with Manly. So obviously they'd done what they needed to do. So that was one of the points that he made. But the main thing he was talking about, obviously, is the Fulton Benji issue. And the other major takeaway is the fact that basically he cleared up and said, look, Fulton, answers essentially to Benji in that he gets final say as future head coach incoming. He gets final say, which is exactly as it should be. But it's a tricky situation, mate. Have you heard or read any different? What's your take on it so far? There's a few things to unpack. I don't want to go off on a half an hour monologue. There's other things I could talk about, but we'll get to it in due course.
Hey, I was enthralled. I was enthralled. I don't know about our listeners, but I was definitely enthralled.
I didn't mention Sheens yet.
No, but look, I've heard the same thing. Not to that extent. You shed a little bit more light on it than I knew. You are that we call you in our chats as Zach the Buzz. You definitely give him a run for his money because he's useless anyway. I think
That's
the thing
just in
that
the drinking department, my friend.
I think the thing that pleased me about that, 360 interview was, and I don't know if our listeners watched it or listened to it or anything like that, was it highlighted how much the media just don't know what they're talking about and how much information they probably get a little snippet of information and then they do put a twist on it and make it so that it's click worthy, because basically everything that Brent Reed was trying to pigeonhole Lee's just basically very calmly, I might add, that's not correct. I don't know how many times I counted that Lee saying that's not correct to either Buzz or Brent Reed, but he was very calm about it and basically it seemed he just wants to be on there to clear the air because obviously the media say what they want to say and there's not much rebuttal. So he just wanted to really get on there and just clear that. The thing that really frustrated me was, and this is just from my perspective, when they said, can you understand, I think it was, again, Reedy, who annoys me beyond belief, but that's not what we're going to talk about. He said something along the lines of, can you understand why a local junior who has stuck through you through thick and thin didn't like getting put a deadline on? And what that made me think was, well, yeah, he stuck through us through thick and thin because he was getting paid $1.2 million. Who wouldn't? Like, it's not like he was doing it by the goodness of his own heart. He was doing it because he was getting paid seven figures. Like, if he was getting paid pittance, he probably would have been gone years ago. That's the only reason he stuck around, in my opinion. The only reason. For as long as he did.
Well, maybe the main reason.
Maybe the main reason.
He does love the club. He's a local junior. I don't think that he or the club had it mapped out this way. You know what's funny on this, and I don't want to derail your mind. Aaron Woods was on one of the radio shows this week. I can't remember which one specifically. There's so many good ones too. But he was talking. He mentioned he was talking about Brooks. He was talking about that time when they left. And he was talking about Moses, and Tedesco. He said they discussed taking a pay cut to stay. They said the major reason we left is because of the head office and the board. They said that's what pushed us to go. It was a mess.
Hasn't changed much either.
I know this is revisionist, but just talking about what you're saying with Brooksy, at no point would a local junior who grew up supporting the club, loving the club, got to debut for his home club. At no point would he have envisioned it going this way. So, yeah, I dispute the fact that there was just money over the years, but that's all right. That's your take on it. All good, but
it's like you said. I probably misspoke, and it probably wasn't the only reason, but it was definitely a deciding factor in my eyes. Definitely a deciding factor. I think that we've been through the wars for a long time now, and he has been the whipping boy for a lot of that. I think that if he wasn't getting paid as much as he was, he would have left because that can't be fun, being the whipping boy, being the brunt of all the criticism. But to another point, yes, he stuck with us, but we also stuck with him. We didn't
Mm,
really drop him, didn't lower his price, like didn't make it so that his price was lower or anything like that. If he was at the Roosters and he was performing the way he was at the Tigers, he would have been dropped, if not released. And that would have shot him out like Kyle Flanagan sort of territory. So, like, the door swings both ways. And again, it's the media finding a really nice angle to I guess demonize this club when really there's so much more to it than just, oh, you gave him 3 days and he's been loyal to you guys. Think about the whole situation. So, but yeah, that's
mm,
what I meant, like how what I sort of took from that and how they can spin what they want. Um, but yeah, I think also um, from that there was a little bit of clarity from me. I've been I've been very, very critical of the leadership in terms of the board, in terms of Pascal, in terms of, Lee as well. Um, but there was a little bit of clarity that was brought on by Hadjimantelis anyway, in the fact that he basically showed that there's certain roles that the leadership team sort of take on. And when I really thought about hard, and you mentioned it last week, how we're going as as the leadership team is, it's not as bad as everyone's painting like I guess painting the picture of it. Sorry. Um, yeah, more so like you understand the CEO, you understand what they achieve, you understand that the CEO, yeah, he's there to grow the club, not to win football games. Now, I still agree that um, they're definitely like a leadership team like that definitely plays a part in the morale of a club. I think if there's infighting, I think if there's instability, things like that, it definitely plays a part in the morale, and that can lead to poor performances as well. But it's just more like it just really shed a bit more light on the situation and made me look at it through a different lens. So that was really good to, I guess, sort of take on board. But also, like, there was one more thing that Adam Teller said, and that was, what did he say? He said they brought up the Justin Holbrook situation, and he's like, there was supposed to be a meeting with Justin Holbrook that was cancelled and all that stuff, and he just went and said, yeah, from what I hear, there was also a meeting with the Bulldogs and the Cowboys with Justin Holbrook,
mm.
but yeah, none of that's been
No
mentioned.
mention. Yeah,
And you
yeah.
could see that as soon as that was said, both reporters, both Buzz and Reedy, just shut their mouth.
Ooh,
They're
one
like,
of those ones. Yeah, and people are starting to call that stuff out a little bit more, which is good. That's what you want to see. You really do. Um,
"Mm,
yeah, it's interesting. Look, I've got faith. Called it blind, but I got faith that uh, two robust big personalities, such as appears to be Fulton and Benji, are mature and able to in the current colours that they're wearing, especially considering that both of them have just sort of stepped into the job in the last 3 to 6 months, which essentially they have the capabilities to be able to put differences aside and work together. I've seen it happen before. I've seen it happen in my professional life. I've seen it happen in football land. It does happen, and I've got every faith that it will happen. And I can see things being smoothed over. It just seems poor timing, considering the place
yeah,
on the ladder,
very
considering
little time."
results and everything else. It's just the last thing you need. Um, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I was just sorry as you were talking, I was listening and just flicking through an article in the Sydney Morning Herald by Prezenko, Adrian Prezenko, a much underrated, I might say, NRL reporter, who I actually quite
Unbiased,
like.
is he?
I like Prezenko. Yeah, he's very factual, and he was discussing. I think it's a tomorrow article, but basically discussing the fact that the managers that we were talking about earlier seem to be from what he's heard, relatively satisfied with the the vision of the Tigers and where they're going, provided that they make a couple of changes to their coaching staff. In that, bring some more experienced heads to come in and help out Benji. So that sounds like a Holbrook, and he even mentioned John Morris in there. So to that point, and the fact we didn't mention Sheens earlier, Sheens, a lot of the scuttlebutt has been about Sheens being upset with the original appointment of Fulton and trying to undermine him, getting Benji's ear, this sort of stuff. There seems that article and from some other things that I've read that there's every possibility that these managers are on side in the next few days and we smooth things over and we really push for a Holbrook as an assistant coach. I'd love Bomber Morris back, considering he's an ex-Tiger. I'd love to
So would
have him
I.
back on board, ex-head coach as well. Did a great job. Both of those coaches, to be perfectly honest, hardly bombed out. Um, Morris was replaced at the Sharks when the Sharks were going well, or relatively well. And Holbrook, obviously, when the Titans were in ninth and in the middle of the season. So, yeah, both decent options. And it sounds, again, from reading this article, and it's just one immediate source looking at, but it sounds as though this sort of stuff is starting to come to a head when it's concerned with the Fayunas, which would be good. But yeah, obviously we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I do have every faith that these guys can work this out. Personally, to be quite frank, if we get a Holbrook or a Morris, Holbrook or a Morris, sorry, we've got Benji there ready to step in head coach. We've got Fulton on side. We've got everyone working on the same part. That's quite a formidable football department, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And particularly if we start nailing a couple of these signings, that Fulton starts putting the feelers out, Fayunas for starters, and we go from there. That I've got every faith that that's going to be an upward trend off the back of that. I rather genuinely do. And I said before that in regards to, I've mentioned Pascoe in the past about his ability, financial officer. I've spoken about the fact I don't mind Lee, despite his gaffes and his frequency frequency of being on the frequencies with his radio spots and that sort of stuff as well. I think that there is the makings there of a solid football club from administration, executive. I don't know anything about the board. Fuck the board. I no idea. They seem dysfunctional, but everything else seems in place. Let's just hope. Because what else have we got at the moment? We hope that these things fall our way. We've been looking for some good fortune in behind the scenes for a while, and let's hope that something like that happens. We didn't get the coaches that we want over the last few years. We haven't landed the signings we want to land, so let's hope.
Yeah, that's fingers crossed. It's funny. I was just while you were saying that, I was reading that article you were discussing. Now, you and I have brought up a name pretty consistently. Well, more so you and I just agreed after seeing his performance in the under-19s in Ethan Sanders. I don't know if you read the end of
Yeah,
that article. No chance of that
yeah.
happening anymore. So
Very,
that's
very surprising, I must say, that the pursuit of him hasn't garnered more attention. He's just
mm,
as, if not more impressive than Fainu, albeit they're a very different player in a very different position, but a very different position. A genuine halfback is very different to a 5'8", particularly a running creative 5'8". But um, yeah, that's a good get for Canberra. That's a bloody good get. We've been talking about Sanders for 2 years,
yeah,
so good luck to them.
yeah.
They found a halfback, and
Imagine that for
yeah,
a
it
future
should be a good
half and
one.
5'8" combination. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
like
that's a young half at that sort of age with the seasoned head like Fogarty can sort of do their apprenticeship in a 5'8" position, and then they can shift in. That's a pretty
yeah, true.
commonplace thing. So,
Yeah.
hmm.
So speaking of that, obviously there's also been discussed that we look to have signed based on medical clearance Aiden Caesar from
Yep,
the Super League. From what I read,
yep.
it's only going to be a 1 year minimal deal. If that's the case, that's a great signing in my opinion. I think
Yeah.
Caesar's not doesn't set the world on fire, but he's a lot better than with the current stocks in Australia. So I think that's a great
So
signing
what
if
do you?
that happens.
Yep. Yeah, a few people have mentioned 12 months. Excuse me, sorry. um, I'd be surprised if it's only 12 months. I thought it might be maybe 1 and 1 to incentivize him to come back, but it sounds like he was due to come back anyway, and that
Yeah.
his contract at Leeds had finished. So maybe it is just 12 months. I don't know after 12 months if we're ready with another halfback though. That's the only issue.
No.
If we are lucky enough to get Fayunu, he's 18. I expect him to play first grade pretty quickly, but um, he's a 5'8" and he's 18. So I guess at that point, then we see who's on the market for 25 and we jump in a halfback in that regard. That could be a possibility. I don't mind the Caesar signing myself either, to be honest. I I
I rate
haven't
it
watched much of him in the
more than I rate it much more than the Cogger signing. If I'm being honest, everyone's like, "Oh, Cogger, he's just like wow, space on his name, Sean Sullivan.
Sullivan. Yeah,
Sean Sullivan. He's just like that. He's going to go and he's going to kick on." I'm like, is Sullivan going? Like Sullivan was doing quite well before he got injured, but so was the rest of the Dolphins.
yeah.
And he's gone from a
Oh,
what?
I was going to say
I don't know.
I don't think that anybody's under illusions that their game changes. Same as Sullivan. I just think they're a decent little first grade halfback. It's the same as Chad Townsend. Chad Townsend took the Cowboys last year to where he took them. He's nothing special. He's a decent little halfback, and he was actually out of form this year, but he played well last year. I see Sullivan in a similar mould, maybe not to the same degree. Um,
Yeah,
but
I don't see Cogger in that mold at all. I think
yeah,
Cogger's
okay.
just
See, I haven't watched enough of Cogger in the Penrith team to know any different. I know he spent time at Newcastle and Bulldogs and couldn't really crack it there. He's obviously the son of Trevor Cogger, who is a big
yeah. I
Magpies
remember you
legend,
talking
and
this last week. Yeah, yeah,
I think early days, I think I mentioned in the pod before that he wasn't a big fan of starting his career at the Tigers when he did have the chance to because he wanted to make his own name. Very similar to the Mitchell
yeah,
Pearce situation with Wayne. But um, I see, yeah, Caesar and Cogger, I'm assuming, would be um, relatively similar in what they bring. I just think Caesar has big game experience. He's a bit older, provided that he's still got his legs enough. I dare say that he's had an extra 6 or 7 years to refine his craft. He's going to be better at following game plans. He's going to come here to do a very, very specific job, and it's
yeah,
not going to be overly creative. He's basically, I think, going to be told get the team around the park. That's what it is, and I think somebody the likes of him, experience is what does that to you. You look at Benji, for example. Benji became more of a halfback general far later in his career, experienced well into his 30s, because
yeah.
that's what he learnt to do. Benji at 26, there's no chance he could do that. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're worlds apart, and I think either of them would do a job. I just think Caesar has a bit more experience, and will probably be better at that role more
Yeah.
so than Cogger, perhaps.
But I think what that also does is brings an experienced half to the club, and that would probably put a little bit more reassurance in the player managers and the player agents that, especially with Latu and stuff like that, it would just be like, well, you're not going to be driving the team just yet. You got a
Yeah,
half that's going to do that. You need to step in when you can, and it'll be very similar
most
to in my
definitely.
eyes. It'll be very similar in my eyes to when Benji debuted, and he had a cool head on him, a cool halfback next to him in Scotty Prince. So, like,
Hmm.
that's been the issue.
And
Like, you have a
Benji debuted a fullback though.
whatever when he in '05. Um, but you
Got to be
also
important to your point though.
no doesn't just don't don't
Does.
ruin the story with the truth. Um,
Uh, sorry, mate.
see now that's what I was going to bloody say.
You're just talking
Uh,
about having an experienced head alongside a young up and comer, and
yeah, but I can't remember
couldn't
where I was
agree
going
more.
with that.
If
I had something
well,
else, but you
I w-
derailed my conversation.
well, try and be correct next time. Um, so if you're looking at the team sheet in 24, I think if you've got a young player in your stock and you're looking to send them to that side, and you see Aiden Caesar as the halfback, as much as that's not Aiden Caesar from 4 years ago when he took Canberra to a grand final, but
That wasn't Aiden Caesar.
he's
That was
been
George.
hey
That wasn't Aiden Caesar. That was George Williams.
Aiden Caesar, mate. George Williams joined him in 2020.
You want to bet?
Yep,
Okay,
yeah, will.
cool.
But in the meantime, while you figure out that I'm right, um, 2019 was the grand final, mate, too, by the way, in case you want to look it up.
Yeah,
Uh,
fair.
the Yeah, I think I agree with you on that point. Having that older head, that seasoned, experienced halfback there, is going to put the managers and the younger kids, if they were to come, the likes of Latu, a bit more at ease, knowing that there is somebody there, as opposed to you compare to who we got now, a Wakeham or whatnot.
Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! You were
Yeah,
right.
how'd you go? Sorry, Terry. Pardon?
Yeah, well, that
Sorry,
gives that gives me more hope. That gives me more hope. He
so,
he took us into a grand final. I'm happy.
sorry, mate. Can you say that in a microphone again? Sorry. Who took Canberra to the grand final? Was it George Williams or
No, it was
just
actually
double check you?
Jack White.
You broke up a bit there, so
Jack White.
Brett
He
White.
was
Brett White
a
was it from Prop?
Brent White.
Uh,
That's right.
Another Tiger Town tangent. Hey mate, do you want
Yeah.
to have a look ahead to this week?
Look, might be a little bit more positive than previous ones because it's against another battler. So
Ladies
let's
and
do it.
gentlemen, Thursday, the 20th of July at 7:50 p.m., you are going to settle down for a nice episode of Spoon Bowl. Dragons in 16th position, St George Illawarra versus the West Tigers in a commendable 17th. Dragons paying $1.66 with Sportsbet. Tigers $2.24. It is the battle of the cellar dwellers, affectionately dubbed Spoon Bowl. Horrible. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
surely we're in with a chance in this game, mate.
Surely. I mean, I watched the last time we beat them live, so let's do it again. This time it is at the Gong, but down in the Gong.
1 to 22. Jarian Buller at fullback. Nofaluma is back from a shoulder injury. He's on the wing with Junior Tupou. Toa and Talau are in the centres for some consistency there. Dane Laurie replaces Will Smith at 5'8". Brendan Wakeham remains at halfback. Uto Ikamanu, David Clemmer are the props. Apasai Coruscant is the hooker. Papali'i and Bateman are the edges. And Sean Bloor comes in after a really good month, I must say, at lock
Mm.
to replace Pole, who moves back to the bench. Talon De Silva as well, young up-and-coming hooker. He replaces Jake Simpkin in the 14. Pole, as I mentioned earlier, is 15. Seafarth and Twal round out the bench. Our extended reserves list then is not a Tassi. It's actually been confirmed as a Cassie. T's now mean K, but that's how it's pronounced. So Akasi James, Jake Simpkin, 19, Smith, Kapoa,
I don't know what
and
you're reading, but
Matamua.
what I'm reading says Atasi. I don't know what you're reading, but that's okay.
Now that's what I said. So the T is
Yeah.
pronounced with a K. That's how his name is pronounced.
Oh, so it is spelled with a T, but it's pronounced with a K.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
That's what I heard on the weekend last week. So there you go.
Oh,
So that's it, mate. That's our side. The St George Illawarra Dragons have a few changes themselves. They've got Turner, Masila, and Sullivan all out. They've got Hunt, Bird, Jaden Hunt. Sorry, Ben Hunt, Jaden Hunt, Max Guy. I don't know how you say those Guy brothers' names. Musgrove, Sloan, and Finau into their side. So their side, I'll go through their side as well for Spoon Bowl. It's an important match, might I add. Have I mentioned that yet? Tyrell Sloan at fullback. So that is the battle of the skilled, talented, lanky blokes at the back there. That'll be interesting. Guy is the winger with Ravalawa. Sully and Lomax in the centres. They've got Talatau and Moan, Junior Moan. Ben Hunt at the 7 and captain. Francis Molo, Blake Laurie are the props. Jacob Little, mate, Jakey Little at 9. Billy Burns and Dan Russell, no idea, are the second
yeah.
rowers. And then Jack DeBellin at lock. Have you ever heard of Dan Russell?
Have not. I have
I
not.
know he's a commentator. Our other old mate, Moses Mbai at 14. Michael Molo at 15. Toby Couchman, 16, and Jack Bird returns from a bit of a layoff with knee soreness in the 17. Fun fact, the Molo boys went to school at not far from here, up here in
From
Brisbane.
me.
So there you go.
There
No,
you go.
from my end, on the
Oh,
north
there you go.
side. Yeah, very, very interesting. So, mate, we've got a couple of changes. Let's talk about them first. Dane Laurie in the 6, obviously. Nofaluma back on the wing. and we've got Talon Silva coming in on the bench. What catches your eye there in those changes? What do you think those blokes bring?
Well, I mentioned this last week. I think De Silva just offers a little bit more creativity than Simpkin does off the bench. I think that the way that it looked like it played out at the back end of last week, um, Simpkin came on and then they had to bring Appy on as a pivot to add a bit more creativity. I dare say that might happen again. But I think that the confidence that De Silva already has is, it's definitely something to be excited about. That intercept that he had, just put his hand out, flicked it up, and caught it, and then got a penalty for it. But then to have the balls to rub Talakai's head after it from an
He's a
18-year-old,
ballsy kid.
19-year-old.
He's a ballsy kid. Yeah.
But I think that just a little bit more creativity when the ruck speed is. I guess the defense is lagging a little bit is what De Silva does. I agree that Sean Bloor has definitely been a game changer, but I think he's been a game changer because he's been on the bench and he gets that aggression when we need it. So I would have preferred him to stay on the bench. I think that he should come in fresh as a daisy and really beat up that middle when it's needed. I could be wrong. He could have the exact same effect starting, but I think I feel that he won't have the same impact as
Yeah, I think
as he.
that's a fair comment. I think though by pulling Polle to the bench, you're then going to get Polle's impact, which is pretty good when plays that bench role as well.
True.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how that dynamic works. But look, let's be honest, Sean Bloor's probably been close to, if not our best forward in the last month, so he probably deserves a starting spot or at least a crack at it.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, not going to dispute that either. Um, but yeah, it's good to see. Like Kapoa's been dropped, and I think that's probably deserved. I think he might need to just go back and get some game time in what could be his preferred position in second row. I don't think he's going to usurp Bloor at the moment. I think Seyfarth has done more than enough to secure his spot. I never thought I'd say that, but I think he has been consistent, which is something that he's never been. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah, he's
think
been
Twali
playing a
needs,
good role.
yeah, I think Twali needs to go back to how he was bending the line previously. I think he's
Yeah,
added that step again, where he stops the line and tries to step through. That's not where he was having the most impact. He was having the impact when he was just looking to bend the line, find his front, and then get on with it.
yeah,
I think he
and
needs to find that again.
straight back between A and B.
AB defender. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's look, you couldn't have kept Will Smith there after the last two performances. So Laurie had to come in because it's the only other choice. Other than Tristan O'Reilly, I mean, they did play a couple of games with him at 5'8" in the trials. So, um, but yeah, I think, and like, funny that we're talking about Laurie. I just read there was reports that he might be going back to the Panthers next year.
yeah. No surprises there,
No, not if he's not getting the game time. May as well go to a club where he can actually win games. So,
mate. Who do you see as the major threats in the Dragon side? We obviously got them earlier in the year, just.
yeah, Sloan's still a threat for me in attack. He's still a very big liability in defense for them. Um, if I was a betting man and I knew what the coaches were thinking, I would say they would target him very highly and really try to, show his positional play. I guess the flaws
Yeah,
in his positional play. Um,
that's what I was going to say. So I wouldn't necessarily target him with high balls per se. I'd be going for positional play. So I'd be swinging it back left and right and back
yeah,
against the grain, that sort of stuff, particularly on short kicks and things in and around the posts.
yeah, exactly. I'm also, is this a different player that I'm seeing? But I'm looking at the team list now, and for the Dragons, there is a Sione Fainu on their reserve bench. That's not our guy, is it?
No, that's Finau.
For now, is it? Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Yes, obviously very
yeah.
much spelled
So
differently.
yeah,
Yes,
very
it is.
similar though. Sione
Yeah,
Finau, I think He is managed by Mario Tartak at the Dragons, and I think he's a centre or a winger. He's quite a good player from what I've seen. He's been playing some reserve grade stuff
Okay.
and some flag. I
Okay.
think that's
I
the
think
age he is. Yeah, so
I feel that if Sione leaves us, that's probably a sign that the other boys won't sign. So
pretty fair sign. You'd like to say.
um,
Yeah,
yeah,
rightio, mate. Well, okay. Have you got a bit of a projection for us then? How do you see the game finishing up? Will we get a win
I
on
don't,
Thursday?
it all depends on who shows up.
That's
Look,
true.
I'd like to think that the conversation that was had behind closed doors with the team was basically a soul check. It was, do you even want to be here? And if you do, we're playing with everything we have this week. We're not leaving like an inch out there. Um, so from that, I think we'll see. I'm hoping that we'll see a very spirited performance. Um, I think that I think that having De Silva back in there, I think that's going to be actually a big positive for us. I think he's going to benefit so much next year from a full preseason under his belt, and he'll
No doubt.
probably be the 14, I dare say, next year. There's reports Simpkin might be on the outer and going to the Eels. Um, I think he's definitely going to work the middle when he comes on, and I think that we do tend to win the middle. It's the edges that we seem to keep losing, and I think as much as we have badmouthed his decision making in the past, at the moment with Staines being out, Noffa's our next best choice for a winger, especially in defense. Um, but yeah, I can't wait to get Staines back on another note. But I think that will go close. I don't think they'll give me a heart attack like they did the last time we played them. But I think we'll probably win, but we won't win convincingly. I think it'll be a very scrappy game. It'll live up to its name, Super Bowl. Wooden spoon bowl, whatever we're calling it. I think it'll be scrappy, but I think we'll just get over there, maybe like 20-16.
Yeah. Oh, God, we don't need that. I mean, we need the win. We don't need another game like that hard in our mouth stuff, do we?
No, no. I watched that game live because I was here in Brisbane, and I was
Mm.
watching it with my dad. If anyone recalls from another pod, and he's a Dragon supporter. And I was talking to him today, and we're talking about the game, and he's like, I don't like watching games with you because you just swear every time. Like, I only swear when my team pisses me off. But
That's
yeah,
every time.
that's every time.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
about
I
yourself?
think it's going to be low. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think that we're going to still struggle to score points, and touch wood, I don't see their execution being much different either. I think they're in a similar boat. I think 3 or 4 tries puts you in a pretty good. 4 tries probably puts you in a winning position. So I'm going to say something similar. I'm going to say 22-18 that we get the win. Um, but I'm going to say we actually start hot and we actually jump out and we lead the whole match. But they start coming back at us a little bit mid late 60th minute mark, 60th or 70th minute. Gives us a few butterflies in the tummy, but we hold on.
Good fun. Any
Bold prediction, mate.
Oh, I went fearless
I'll go first
predictions.
this week.
Let's do fearless, eh? Fearless predictions.
No, I'm bold. You're bald. I'm going to go. Well, you can be fearless. I'll be bold. How about that?
How about that?
I'm going to say that. Yeah, I'm going to say that. Jarian Buller is going to have another screamer. He's going to completely outplay Sloan. He's going to score another one. He's going to have 2 try assists.
Oof. And
So
then
he's going to have a hand in 3 of our 4 tries.
he signs a 10-year extension. Um,
Nah, 20-year extension. He's going to
okay,
be coach after Benji.
sweet. Mine is, I think, and I think I said this last time, but I think I'll go with it again because I feel he's brewing something. I think actually De Silva will go over from dummy half and score his first NRL try.
That'd be nice. That'd be good. All right. Mate, any other thoughts on the game or what we've spoken about tonight before we go through the PSAs?
Not really, but for anyone that hasn't read that Sydney Morning Herald article that we're discussing, apparently, according to them, and again, take all this with a grain of salt, but by the end of this week, there should be a decision both on assistant coach and the Fainu brothers. So
Fingers crossed we hear something. If not at the end of this week, then it's at some point in the next week would be nice. Something before the next pod. I mean, since Fulton's come, it's been crickets, and realistically, we haven't signed anyone since the start of the year, Brandon Wakeham. So there needs to be movement, and we're crying
he
out for
needs to
something.
earn his
Hopefully,
money.
some positive
I'm
news.
sure he's on a good wicket. I'm sure he's on a good wicket with his reputation. So he needs to be earning his money.
I agree, mate. It's been a pleasure. As we always say, hop onto the YouTube channel, Tiger Town Podcast, or Spotify. Give us a follow or a like or whatever the platforms do on there. I'm not around it overly well, but I know that they are all a little bit different. So make sure you do that so you don't miss an episode. Episodes Wednesday every single week. If you haven't already, and I know you should have, and I know you would have, hop onto West Life Podcast, hop onto the West Tigers podcast. Those two blokes, or those two podcasts, I should say, those blokes at those two podcasts do it better than us. We say it every single week. The other thing we say every single week, mate, as we wrap up the show, is go the mighty bloody Fulton Marshall Fayunu West Tigers.
I actually like that. Go the Tigers.